Alright, let's take a look at illustrating the multiplication of decimals. On today's video, we're going to look at actually two different ways to illustrate the multiplication. We'll begin with illustrating the multiplication of a um, decimal times a decimal. So we'll look at in our expression 4/10 times 2/10. So first thing is, let's be sure that we understand that there is a correlation between fractions and decimals. Both fractions and decimals can be defined as parts of a whole. So we can actually see that 4/10 here can be expressed as a decimal, or as a fraction, sorry, as 4/10 times 2/10. Now, as we did with our when we illustrated multiplication of fractions, we know that when we look at this, we're going to use one base unit. So if you can look here at the figure shown, we see a 10 by 10 figure. Now I'm going to begin with, and we'll start with the 4/10 first. So we're going to look at, let's illustrate 4/10. So I'm going to take of the 10, I'm going to come down and let's take and shade in. We'll highlight this one in yellow for it to represent 4/10. And there we go. So we look at this, and this represents 4/10. So I want to label this side 4/10, and this shows me that 4 of the 10 rows are colored. Therefore, 4 of 10, or 4/10, are shaded. Now, this is just one piece of what we're trying to do here. We also, as we look at, we want to say, hey, this multiplication, as we've talked in prior lessons, this is actually of. So we're asking really, what is 4/10 of 2/10? So the second step is, once we get that done, let's take a look at, we're going to represent 2/10 on the same model, but instead of using rows, this time we're going to use columns. So let's label down here, this is going to be our 2/10, and from top to bottom, all the way from top to bottom, I want to just show 2 of the 10 columns being shaded. And although my coloring isn't perfect, you get the point there. So we've got 2/10 and 4/10. Now what we want to focus on, and with the colors blue and yellow, when they mix together, you can see on mine that we see the green here with these 8 boxes. See these 8 right here? Those 8 are my answer. So what is 4/10 of 2/10? It would be right there, 8. But 8 what? Well, 8 out of how many total? And that's the 10 times 10, or the 100, or we could see that as a decimal as 800ths. Well, let's check our math using the standard algorithm. What if I set this up? I would get 8, and then I know there are 2 places here behind, so I need 1. I don't have anything there. I'm going to have to add the placeholder 0. And so we see that this is how we illustrate a decimal times a decimal using a model. Next, let's take a look at illustrating a whole number here. So this time we're going to take a look at illustrating 3 times 6/10. Now the one thing I want to point out here is that with the 3, when we have the whole number, you're going to notice that we've got a total of 3 objects. So I've got 1, 2, and then 3. Now again, if I come back to my multiplication sign, it's 3 of 6/10. So same thing we were doing before, is we're going to take an of each model. We're going to look at coloring in 6 of them. And so we have 6 there. And 6/10 here. And last but not least, 6/10 here. And now, all of a sudden, I have 3 different individual 6/10, because that's what it's saying. It's saying 3 of 6/10. Now, together, how many total do we have? So we've got 6 out of 10 here, And let me actually do this for you. Let me just, I'm going to number them. So I have how many tenths? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. So I have 18 total tenths, which written as a fraction would look like this. But what would that look like as a decimal? Well, I could start by just turning it into from an improper fraction to a proper fraction, which would be how many groups of 10 are in 18. That would make one whole. And then there are 8 tenths left over. So 1 and 8 tenths, or 1 and 8 tenths as a decimal. Well, let's once again, we'll check with the standard algorithm, and let's set this up. So I'm going to put my 0.6 times 3, and that would be 18. I'm one place behind, and I would put it here. Once again, you see that my answer matches, and this is how I would illustrate a whole number times a decimal. So this is 3 groups of 6 tenths. So I see the model shows me just kind of how that works out, and how do we multiply a number times 6 tenths and get 1.8. So that's models with multiplication. Talk to you soon.